Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Tuesday night chat or Tuesday night bull ring. I got Matt from Resist to Tyranny, Guns, Gear, and Politics, and of course Rosie O'Kelly here. And I'm going to let the two of them do an intro right quick. Not that they really need to, but just in case. And I'll start with you, Rosie.
Rosie O'Kelly channel, Rosie Murphy channel, variety, some serious topics on the Rosie Murphy channel. Good evening, everybody. Glad to be here on TR's Tuesday night chats, and always happy to see Matt on the panel too. And let's get to it. Let's get ready to rumble.
All right, Matt, go ahead if you want to say anything, man.
I don't know. Rosie seems ready to fight. I don't know. Rosie's going to kind of sit here and be like, I'm sorry. Thanks for having me on TR. Matt from Resist to Tyranny, Resist to Tyranny, Guns, Gear, and Politics here on YouTube. Also all the social media different places. Been kind of grumpy all day today, so it should be interesting later on. But other than that, got 2 more videos I'm posting throughout the week, and one I have to remake next weekend. But yeah, look for all that stuff. Make sure and go check out, see what happens to a Fat Max tape measure when you shoot it with an AK-47.
Wow.
That's a fun one. I'm gonna start doing more of those, like those fun shooting videos. You know, I've made a couple where I shot an iPhone, shot the Fat Max tape measure. You know, shot a Magpul AK mag. You know, because I didn't like it. It just, I think I'm going to start doing more of those.
That's what we call EOL, end-of-the-line videos. I've shitty cords, all kinds of things that don't work well, boom, up in flames or blown up or destroyed. Good stuff.
I think people enjoy videos like that. I mean, I know I do. I mean, you can only watch so many reviews on equipment and guns and stuff you kind of already know about anyway, but then somebody's like, hey, let's see what happens with tannerite and this, or let's shoot of this, or whatever it is, and you're like, oh yeah, let's check it out.
I got to just throw in there some guys in Australia that do crazy shit, and they'll do slow motion, and they get a washing machine that's off balance, and it just destroys itself over 5 minutes, spinning and going off balance and out of control, and literally just shakes apart. It's funny as hell.
Pops says I should shoot an AK, like shoot an AK with an AK. And Pops, I would be freaking ecstatic to do that. You have my address. Go ahead and send me an AK. I will shoot holes in that thing, and it'll probably still work.
Yeah, I was about to say, you just need a donation gun from somebody.
Yeah, somebody want to send me an AK-47 and an AR-15, I will do the true AR versus AK test. I will shoot both of them.
Yeah, Pop said it's coming next week, man.
Yeah, he said, hold your breath. Okay, would you like to do the normal Tuesday start off kind of talking about economics, Rosie?
Sure. It's, you know, we're coming into springtime now when traditionally the saying, sell in May and go away, typically comes into the fore. It's probably wrong as much as it's correct, but it's an old Wall Street saw, and by and large it's because the volume dries up, people start to go away, take holidays and all that. But this is not the time this is the time you may not want to be on holiday. We've had a really good bounce back from the horrors of late December and January, and basically recovered all that we lost. So if you had a mind in here, and if you were of a conservative bent here, this would be an ideal place to. It's kind of like if you were gambling at the casino and you went down $500 and then, damn it, you came back up, you know, $498 or whatever. What are you going to do? You know, if you keep playing, the longer you play, the more the certainty of ruination due to the house edge. Well, it's like stocks. We've had a huge bounce back here. And if you're of a conservative mind, you may want to put aside something into a more sheltered type of investment. I know rates are low; they still tend to be low, but might be a good time to take some chips off of the equity table and put them short term in bonds and things like that, 1 year, 2 year notes, or very short term CDs and things like that, if you're able to, within the context of your 401ks or your retirement plans or your regular portfolio. If it's sheltered, you don't have to worry about the taxation on that. I only say that because, you know, we've come up, and I typically talk about the Dow. We've come up from 15,500 after that horrendous drop from about 17,800 to 15,500. Yeah, scary and everything. It looked like the bottom was dropping out. Thought it might be the shit hits the fan moment. Well, here we are up again, up at those within scratching distance of those old highs. And if you have that conservative mind and you don't like risk, this might be a perfect time to get some of your chips off the table. Now, having said that, I do have that expectation that a bubble is being built and it's still in place, but why put all of your money on that type of premise? It's the kind of thing where you want a little bit of your mad money, your more speculative, aggressive stuff to be in that arena. Gold and silver continue to hold their ground well, which should concern anybody out there, why they would be holding their ground particularly well within the midst of what's going on, this supposedly strong recovery. It's because they're still being accumulated somewhere and in great quantities by probably central banks and places like that, on the expectation that the game can't continue the way it's gone with attempts at reinflation, and you know, all the money that had been printed, all the liquidity that was put into the system. So I think it's smart. It also still represents great value out there. I really think it's a wonderful place to be. We've started to have a little bit of a pullback in oil prices again, as I expected. You got to remember, guys, we dropped from $80 a barrel to 26 bucks a barrel in almost a straight looking line here, and it was a traumatic and dramatic drop. There was a lot of companies. The chairman of Chesapeake Energy Corporation plowed his car. You know, he met his demise. Probably at best, his mind was on work and he wasn't paying attention to the road. And at worst, he probably did himself in with all the crap going on in the oil market. So, don't be fooled. If you have oil stocks, I'd be tempted to take a bit off the table with them too. They've had a really nice recovery. But yet, the downstream aspects of dealing with lower revenue and lower profits is still very much the reality that will be dealt with in the months and years ahead. Our imports from Saudi Arabia have reached the lowest level, I think, since 2011, because we're just simply not importing oil anymore anywhere near the extent that we used to. We actually have a positive, I think actually since 2002 was the last time that our oil imports from Saudi Arabia were this low. We're still producing massive quantities of oil in this country, even at this price here. I don't see very many repercussions on the oil arena yet, and what has to be a very difficult adjustment coming up here. So that's one area. The trade deficit widened a little bit, and we're still sucking in $47 billion more stuff a month than we're exporting in this country. And that's always a worrisome sign. Even though our imports of oil have declined so dramatically, the ones that we are taking in, the barrels that we are taking in, they were like 27.45 average a barrel for the first quarter. I mean, it's like we should be doing better than we are, but you know what the problem is? The exports to Asia, Brazil, those countries are on a weak trend and getting weaker. So beware. Although we may have a bubble on one hand, Donald Trump's not far off when he talks about, you know, beware, the next recession is going to be a mega recession out there. And it's very true because why? The Federal Reserve has no more weapons to really deal with fighting that. So we live in interesting times. So that's my take on economic stuff for this week. And unless anybody has any question, issue metals or equities or anything like that, that's just the way I feel about things right now.
Well, the only thing I'm upset about with the $80, well, the fluctuation, $80 down to $26 a barrel, is that gas isn't $80 a barrel. That would be awesome.
You might get your wish. Coming up.
It dipped down fairly low, but it did ease back up around here.
You'll see it start to come back down again.
I'm paying $1.86 a gallon right now.
Like $1. I'm gonna say 59.
I think we're 245 out here.
It might have creeped up to $1.89. Anyhow, it was down I was buying it for like $1.31 here a month ago or so.
Yeah, the cheapest I saw it around here was like $1.40, but that was like at gas stations I never ended up at. They were complete other south side of town. The farther north you go in Tucson, the more expensive it gets.
Well, South Carolina's got one of the lowest tax on gas, state tax. It's one of the lowest. It's not the lowest, but it's one of them.
Primary in Wisconsin. Bernie Sanders wins the primary in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I just got a flash across from Jen. Bernie Sanders won Wisconsin.
Well, it sounded like you read a real similar article to what I read, if not the same one, when some of that you was talking about. It was either that article or another one that was talking about that even though they had kind of projected that there was a small first quarter growth, they said if you factor in the error factor, because the number was so low, like 0.5, that it actually could be negative. Like there was actually probably no growth in the first quarter. And it got to talking about the trade deficit and stuff like that. So.
Well, do you remember, you guys are younger, but do you remember in the 90s, it was, and the 2000s, there was that big push to internationalize the Fortune 500, get as much international as you can, open as many offices. I mean, I was a beneficiary of that in the early 90s in China and places like that. We had this real push towards globalization. And now we all kind of succeed or fail at the margin of what we do overseas as corporations now. So you better believe there's headcount trimming going on and some other things. And I was on a hangout the other night with a guy that works in the oil patch down in Texas there, and he's been there 23 years. He really knows his stuff. And he said, we got guys, the take-home pay a week is $2,500 down here. But the problem is, when you lose a job that has that amount of income to it, it's impossible to replace it with another job. So people are gradually being worked off of the roles. So between the international selling opportunities kind of waning here and what's going on with the oil, I still say the forces of deflation are still pretty darn strong. There's still, as TR said, there's still way too much debt out there relative to our ability to handle and service that debt.
Rosie, you're staticking really bad.
Oh. All right.
I on a side note, I think I seen you post that you store gas, Matt. Do you use that stay bill?
No,
No, you don't.
I usually, the longest I've ever stored a gallon of gas, and it was never a gallon, but I couldn't, it was in a 5-gallon gas can, but I couldn't tell you there was 5 gallons in it, was 2 years. And it was fine. I ran it in my motorcycle. It was basically, it was my like emergency top off, you know, container is what it was. And I wrote with permanent marker, wrote on there when I filled it up, and it was just about almost 2 years later. No stabilizer, no gas, no dry gas, anything like that. And 2 years later, it was still starting up a Harley and lawnmowers.
Is that better? Test.
Yes.
Okay.
Was that do you know if it had ethanol in it or not?
I don't.
Yeah.
It would have been 5 to 7 years ago. So I don't know how much ethanol they were putting in the gas then. And it would have been Marathon gas.
Yeah, just checking. Because I really don't know how long it takes fuel untreated, especially if it was non-ethanol, just regular gas. I'm not sure how long it takes before it starts going dead. Because that's what we always call it, dead gas. I've seen it in cars before where they set for a long time, but most of the time they set for years, you know.
Yeah, I didn't know if you heard earlier that Bernie Sanders won Wisconsin tonight, which is kind of cool if you like a dogfight for the Democrat side. That's kind of interesting. But that story I was telling was down in Texas, and I'll just wrap up on this. This guy worked in the oil fields for 23 years, and he's seeing people get laid off, and there's no jobs between the $2,500 a week take-home pay when they're working the oil patch up on the rigs or pipe stock supply, stuff like that. The next drop down is like working at a Dollar General store or something like that. So there's just nothing else out there. There's nothing. I mean, it just highlights really the lack of what I guess I'd call middle class jobs, the drying up of the middle class of this country.
Honestly, I'd probably move back to Ohio if I thought I could get decent work there. There's work all over the place here. There's good work in Ohio, just everybody's 60 years old and still doing it. You know, gotta wait for somebody to die off.
Yeah. You know, I pulled my well pump today, Matt. It went on the fritz, and I just didn't have time to diddle with it and change out some of the components and stuff. So I ran it down to a local guy around the corner. 42 years electric motor repair. It is 42 years, and he'll probably be closing his doors soon. It's kind of like you know, a lot of the skilled people just can't make a go of it around here anymore. But good for where you are, Dan. I just thought it's kind of just passing of another era when you have those little repair facilities in those shops.
Well, everything's going to being disposable. People just don't. For one, a lot of stuff isn't repairable, and then two, people just, even if it is, we're just consumers. People just, well, it went out, throw it away, got to get another one.
Well, that's this TV I have behind me. I fixed for my, you know, Janet comes on my Hangouts, the blonde gal, for her hobby, that TV. And normally they're not repairable, but he liked it so much, and you know, it just makes you feel good when something can be saved from a landfill. I'm breaking up again?
No, okay. That's probably from earlier.
Okay.
I was at Sprint yesterday to ask them how much time I had left on my current phone before I could upgrade, and they said only 2 months. And the phone I'm going to get, surprisingly enough, is a smartphone that you can remove the battery. That's something you don't see very often anymore. You know, the smartphones, the batteries are affixed inside the case, and you got to have a special tool to tear it apart and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, mine you can take the battery out.
Yeah.
Mine you can't. It's locked in an Android HTC One, locked in.
But I mean, you know, usually after 2 or 3 years, they get to where they don't work worth crap anyway. The technology and everything. I don't know. The one I just got rid of, well, I didn't get rid of it, but switch phones. It was a smartphone, but man, that thing was so slow. I couldn't hardly look up anything far as on the internet kind of thing. It was a great phone, but as far as the internet, it sucked. And I upgraded to another phone, and it was like, wow, I can actually look stuff up now. You know.
Hey, you know, speaking of which, I got a question for you guys. I walked in on a conversation in the lunchroom today where they were talking about how kids are not learning as much. Now, this isn't a conversation about how bad the public schools are and Common Core and all that. This is just this one particular thing. That kids are not learning as much these days because they don't have to open up the encyclopedia to look something up. All they have to do is Google it. And I understood their argument that, like, if you're looking up a quote from, say, George Washington, then all you got to do is look up that quote and that's it. Many times you don't have any context around that quote, like why he said it, what the situation was, and all that. And that's things that you learn from, like, looking in an encyclopedia or a book. You know, you actually have to read until you get to the quote, and you figure things out. You're able to put that quote into context. So I understood a little bit where they were coming from, but at the same time, I would say that the ease of access to information has made it better instead of worse. What's your opinion on that?
I think that's a really interesting thing to talk about, because I'm kind of like you. I think the information's available, and I watched my own girls grow up, and one would read broadly to get the answer, and the other was just very focused on, I just want the exact thing right there. I don't want to do any other reading around, almost like Cliff Notes approach to education. Just give me the answer I need, and to hell with everything else. But I think what you're talking about, Matt, is the risk of that is you lose your connecting rods to other disciplines. And at least when I went to college, and I was lucky enough to go to college and work for that, but I'm saying you got a liberal arts kind of education, and you could kind of connect. You know, there were connections to be made amongst different disciplines and things like that. And I think that that's what's lacking today, is those connecting rods that sort of bring creativity and bring new ways of thinking about it to being. Because the theory of liberal arts was you knew a little bit about a lot of different subjects, not a whole hell of a lot. I mean, that's what your major was really for. But to be able to be a critical thinker and a broad thinker, and take two interrelated things and make some kind of inductive inference about something maybe they're of value. I think that's kind of lost today. The need to feel like you need to make connections in disciplines that may not be obviously related to each other, but yet can have real evolutionary impacts as far as moving ahead in society and creativity and things like that. I think that's the risk of a very specialized, compartmentalized, go in and grab it and bring it out sort of knowledge that you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, because when I look stuff up online, it's almost never, okay, for instance, I was in a vehicle with somebody, one of the guys I trained with. We were coming back from Phoenix, and something got brought up about something got brought up about skunks. Oh, I had asked him. I said, from Ohio, I'm used to seeing skunk roadkill all the time, everywhere, and I've never seen one out here. And he grew up here, and I asked him about, is there skunks here? He's like, hey, you get into the mountains and some of the greener areas, you find them, but down here in the desert, not quite as often. And I said, what family is the skunk, I wonder? And I looked it up on my phone right there. I found out the genus and the family, but I also read like 10 paragraphs about, skunk behavior, its cousins and brothers and sisters, all the different animal species that it's related to. So maybe that's just me. Maybe that's my curiosity playing in, where I got all that other information, where somebody could have just stopped at the genus species of what a skunk is. But I wouldn't have known that stuff. I don't own encyclopedias, but I wouldn't have known that stuff, and especially in near the amount of time that I knew it, had I not had the internet. And so I think I can make a reasonable argument how the internet is good for education that would probably match the argument how the internet is potentially bad for education.
I think it's kind of, because you was kind of brought up to read around the subject and know the subject, whatever the question was, not just A, B, whatever the answer is. And I think that would probably be the difference. Because I read a similar article. It was saying, yeah, the information's there. I did read it, but I forgot exactly, or I skimmed over it. I don't remember. But anyway, they were getting more like what Rosie was saying, I think, where they just, okay, there's a question, they just find the answer to it, and that's it. Whereas we were brought up having to kind of read the subject, and probably more so because whether it's habit, curiosity, or just want to know, like you said, you read more into it. Okay, well, there was more information. It was interesting to you, and I guess that's the difference with the what they're saying about the kids today is that they're not really being educated. They can find the answer to something, but they're not being educated on it.
Well, it's on the output. It's on the output side too, Matt and TR. In this sense, once in a while on my channel I'll put up old archive stuff from the 30s, 40s, and 50s public archives thing. And one of them was looking back at school and kids that would, had trouble reading and getting along and trying to help parents with that. And it just staggered my mind that back then, and I was a product of that too. I mean, we would have 40 people in a class, 40 to 45 people, students in a class. And you look today, and it's been cut down to 20 students in average in a class. But at that time in school, not only did you have to be able to contextually read, which I think Matt is kind of pointing at, that you have to have the context of which things come out of, like the historical contents, the context, the economic context. You have to know how things came about and how they came into being, certain things in mathematics and things. So we had very contextual educations back then. But now you look at it on the other side, we know we've got the hunt and peck for finding stuff, almost like it's an Amazon warehouse where I'll go down to history. Level 3 is American history. Pull out the answer. There it is. Thomas Jefferson, 1804. Boop, thank you. But now look at the other end too. Even with 20 students per class, a lot of teachers don't want to read. Things aren't geared to have long papers and weekly essays and things like that written. They're all geared towards things that can be scanned, and also maybe one big paper per semester, and that's it. And everything else is quizzes here and there. I'm also noticing as my girls went through school, and one's been out of college for years, but the other one's just about through. I noticed that the volume of writing went down as time went on, and in contrast to myself in college, where you had to give ideas back to, and on a regular basis, besides just multiple choice or choose, yeah, or fill in the blank, 1 or 2 words. It was things just got geared down to be a lot easier on the administrative and mechanical end of teaching as well. And I think that's it's maybe lighten the teacher's load, but when I'm thinking to myself, 45 kids, and then I thought back to my own early educational days. Yeah, we always had 40, 45 students in a class, and I never remember being slighted for that amount of kids that were in there.
So what I'm to understand is, I don't think that either one of you said that getting education or information off the internet is a bad thing, but it's all in how you use it. If you go just to the answer, it becomes memorization at that point. It's just like, what's 1 + 1? It's 2. Well, why? As long as you read the why, the internet's just fine for education, as long as it's not just 2. Am I?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of, I didn't know
exactly on. Yeah.
but kind of what we're saying. It's not that there's the lack of information, because definitely they've got a way vast, easier, and more information than has ever been humanly possible. It's quick. It's just a matter of how that information is being used, whether
education has to also mirror society, and we're in a society where technology is the driver, and technology, like one of the beauties of the English language is it's 26 letters, and you can make twice as many words as any other language in the world out of it. It has that efficiency built into it. Well, it's the same thing in our computer data age. People want it fast, people want it simple, and that's the bottom line. So pretty soon, probably within 50 years or so, words will change once again the way they're written in things like dictionaries to text, TXT, and you can imagine all these things that are taking place to be, quote, more efficient, unquote, with the economization of resources and get to the point and all that. But one of the things that's missing is that you don't have the ability to dive into ideas and then write about those ideas, and then maybe through your writing you also come to some other truths and some other realizations about what you're writing about that weren't necessarily included within the context of what you're supposed to do. And that's the kind of thing I think is I'm noticing that missing, the ability of people to interrelate ideas and make connections compared to years ago, when people just seemed to know a diversity, a little bit about a lot of different things. I think it's socialization too. Socialization comes down to a keyboard for most kids in front of them now, a touchpad on a Android or an Apple phone.
That brings up another good point. Because I made a video. It was actually one of the few videos I've ever published on my YouTube channel that I made only for my cell phone. And I had read a news article in my local paper and had a conversation with somebody where they said that, like, social media was destroying basically social lives, real life social lives. And that's another one of those where I can kind of see where that's coming from, but at the same time, I think it's completely wrong. And I mean, we're perfect examples of it sitting right here. In my town, with the kind of people that I rolled with, the kind of people that I rode with and hung out with, I had all the friends I was going to have. And I saw them on a fairly regular basis. So with that being said, I should say I had all the friends I cared to have in that town. With that being said, I met TR online. The 15 people that I went to Missouri with for a shoot, people that live here that I met online before I moved here. I mean, I think that social media and social sites like Facebook, YouTube, and G+, I think they work excellent for expanding your social life.
Well, I think it's kind of the same thing. It just depends on how you use it. You know, it can be an awesome tool. I think it's an awesome tool, no doubt. YouTube has become part of my social life, no doubt.
I just see and I didn't mean to interrupt you, TR. Go ahead.
No, I just say it, but you know, but it could be, if it's not used in a positive way. Even if they get them a bunch of friends, but they're just posting pictures of pizza and whatever and this and that. Okay, that's what they use it for. I'm not saying they're wrong, but it's not expanding their mind or anything. You know, it's not really helping them. I don't know. Maybe as a nerdy kid, maybe you can have more friends and make it feel better. I don't know, but
yeah, I think
how you use it.
I kind of agree with Matt and you. I agree with Matt in a sense that the internet allows you to have what one friend of mine calls FIAs, F-I-A's, friendly internet acquaintances. And that's good. You can make a lot of friends on the internet and things, but by and large, most of them will remain internet friends. But in my own neighborhood, which surprisingly is still very young, skewed towards a very young average age, probably about 18 years old, 17, 18 years old would be the average, which is kind of unusual in the nation right now. But I have to tell you that when I see kids interact in a non texting way or non-internet way and things, I don't see the interactions anymore. I see an awkwardness on a social level that I never knew when I was growing up or observed over even 10 years ago. But now I see people kids in a rush to get home and to do their own thing and to sure, they'll text each other all day. They'll get on maybe Hangouts and things like that, and play video games. But as far as face-to-face, I've definitely seen many more challenges amongst young people with in-person interpersonal relationships compared to years ago.
Well, kind of lead up to another point, just what you're talking about. How often do you see kids out in yards playing football, riding bikes, climbing trees, whatever? And that probably, the way you put that, Rosie, probably leads to these safe places that we're seeing these stories about on colleges, because they're not used to dealing with somebody face to face. You know, because if it's internet, social media, if you don't like somebody, you just quit looking at it. You don't have to. You don't have to listen to it. Whereas in real life, hey, you got to listen to it. It's there. You can't avoid it.
I think a lot of that, while can be probably placed on the internet, I think that also comes down to the parents. You know, because parents are saying, "Don't go outside. It's dangerous out there." You know. And in many places, it is more dangerous. I mean, nationally, we're safer. You know, we like a lowest violent crime rate in something 30, 35 years. I mean, nationally, we're safer. But there are some places like Detroit and Chicago that will never bounce back. I mean, they'll continuously decay. So they're, you know, I think some of that has to do with parents. Then you have to talk about video games. You know, as well. There's a lot more to what you said, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, TR. I don't disagree at all. I'm just saying that I think we can point at more than just the internet for that.
I just think also the physical aspects of being healthy have now been removed. If I can expand on Matt's observation, and I've been in the same general area for about 20 years. My kids grew up in this area, and it's like you look at a park today, and this city has a lot of different parks around. And 15, 18 years ago, you would go to these parks, and there would be people of all ages, and I mean all ages. They'd be people playing on softball leagues, adults. You'd have teenagers hanging out at picnic tables and stuff like that. Not just after school, but on weekends. Basketball courts. There'd be a community garden. And now, when I walk past these parks, and I walk through these parks, it's like you see the very young toddlers, and up to about age 4 or 5, and then after school there'll be kids up to about 8 or 9 swinging on the swings. But boy, it's like a ghost town on the basketball courts. It's like a ghost town hanging out at the picnic tables and stuff. I just think it's a rush to be plugged in and find out what people are doing. But the other downside of that being plugged in, and they did a study that was released a couple of weeks ago, that the depressing aspects of social networking like Facebook and stuff like that, you get exposed to this huge variety of people all over the world, and some have more money than you, some have less money than you, and if you're in a lower social strata or you're struggling, you're exposed to a world of like success and money success and people achieving. And they found out that rates of depression amongst like the 18 to 29-year-old group who were constantly plugged into social media was much higher than it used to be, precisely because of that sort of social networked world that it opened up for them. But the real point is about the physical aspects of not getting into shape and not being on playgrounds. And some of these high schools are having problems fielding football teams now and sports teams.
Yeah, one of the things that when I made the video, a year and a half ago about technology and social media, one of the things that it was somebody on Facebook like posted a picture of an airport terminal full of people looking at their iPads and cell phones and said nobody socializes anymore. And I had to sit there and look at that and go, really? Yeah, that's your example? Is like a bus station or airport terminal? You don't talk to people there. Even before smartphones, did you really strike up a bunch of conversations with strangers at the airport terminal? No, you didn't. Maybe one person that you accidentally bumped into. You had a 3-second conversation about, ha ha ha, nice shoes, or some bullshit like that. But it's like, if that's your example of how smartphones are ruining society, I feel bad for you.
Yeah, that is a bad example now that you mention it.
Well, I could say you get on planes, and I've been flying for, 35 years, and I fly a hell of a lot every year. And I can tell you on planes, when they say power off, put it in airplane mode, and blah, blah, blah. It used to be you might strike up a conversation with somebody. I mean, I feel awkward if I'm not talking a little bit to the person. They squeeze you like sardines on these flights. But now you almost have to think twice. You can almost hear a pin drop on these planes. Very little, and I don't care whether it's a 10-hour flight to Shanghai or wherever it's just a different kind of world. I'm not making a judgment about whether it's better or worse. I'm just saying things have changed in ways that I don't think we fully appreciate because we're living it real time and we're not really seeing. We know there's effects out there, but we just don't know whether they're all good, bad, or split. They're probably, of course, split, but it's just things have changed a lot in just a generation, a lot. And more than probably any generation in history in a shorter period of time.
Well,
Yeah,
Saint is apparently the friendliest person in the world because I've been flying my whole life, and I've never seen groups of people at the airport terminal strike up conversations with each other.
No, I haven't either. It might just be, hey, how you doing? Or are you done reading the paper? You know, can I look at the paper? Or, but in a plane is kind of a different story, and you got to kind of sit there for 3, 4, 5 hours or whatever. And I've met great people on planes and had very interesting conversations with people. And you can kind of tell when somebody doesn't want to talk and somebody doesn't mind chatting. But there was just some socialization positive aspect to that, though, Matt, of being able to knock off your rough edges a little bit, and maybe a takeaway, and you think, wow, that guy was really smooth the way he talked, or that's a fascinating thing to know, to talk to somebody. You know, you kind of, your world almost gets two-dimensional in a lot of ways.
You know what I keep thinking about? The movie Airplane, where what's his first name? Jack? I don't know. I remember his last name Stryker, but is sitting on the plane talking to that old lady about like his whole story with Elaine. And then it comes back to the two of them sitting there, and she's a skeleton.
Oh yeah, Dustin a skeleton, yeah. Long flight.
Oh man.
But I think overall, I see where they're coming from, and I think there is some truth to it. I think, just like you was talking about, Matt, like us using social media the way we use it, we do communicate more and trade ideas and talk more. I'm not saying all younger generation don't use it to a good, level, but there's just a disassociation with people, even though. Okay, this is a cartoon, but this is what we're talking about popped in my head. I don't know if y'all have ever seen the movie Wall-E. It's a cartoon.
Mm-mm.
But I don't have kids, but I watched it. I thought it was good anyway. But it's based in the future, and everybody is on a hover pad thing, like a lounge chair, and they got a screen in front of them. And they talk to each other, they chat and all this, but later on in the movie, like a couple of them bump into each other accidentally, and it was like the first time they've ever seen anybody face to face. The movie has a really deep kind of message of whatever, but anyway, I don't know. I shouldn't have got off on that tangent. But if you ain't seen Wall-E, just like Wall and then E, it's actually a pretty good little movie. But anyway, I think there's something to be said about people not talking to each other, and it's almost like a dissocialization. Yeah, they're talking to more people through texts and all that, but at the same time, they're not dealing face to face or having an actual interaction with people.
Well, you look at I'm looking at something from the Pew research, and they did a back at the end of 2014. They studied trends of never married adults, 25 years and older, and back in 1980, 8% of women never married, and that in 2012 that was 17%. That was over a doubling of that, and then for men, from 10% never married up to 23%, more than a doubling there. And you can't just account for that, and you can't say cohabitation and things like that, because people were cohabiting in that was back at 60s started, but yeah, cohabitation was going in the 60s and 70s, but the real dramatic rise has been from 2000 to 2012, where this study ended. And I have to attribute a lot of that to less people being married, because there's less opportunities really to, once you get out of high school or out of college, there's probably less social situations really to meet and develop relationships than there probably used to be, precisely because so much is carried on social networking online now, whether it be a phone or computer-based, as opposed to having to go out and track it down, so to speak. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I'm sure there's some truth to that. There's way less opportunity, but getting back, probably more so what Matt said earlier, probably has a lot to do with the parents, how they're pushed, how they're not pushed. There's way more single parents now than there were years ago. You know, I don't know how to say it without sounding like I'm slamming women. I'm not. But I see a lot of single women as a parent, they cuddle their kids more than they raise their kids. That's just my experience, what I see. I'm a single man, so when I date women in my age group, most of the time they got kids, and they cuddle the kids. Almost every time they're dropouts. They're just not useful to society. I can't blame it on the way they raise them. I know it's asking a lot out of a single mom to be the dad and the mom. They know how to do the mom part in a traditional. Usually the dad does the discipline, the mom does the nurturing. They do the nurturing fine. They just can't find the balance between the both, and that's a lot to ask. Don't get me wrong. I don't know.
I just think something's very out of whack. Something is just not aligned properly, and it's on a couple different planes.
I think though all the problems we have in society now, young people and all that, it's a combination. I don't think you can point to one thing and say this is why. It's a little bit of a lot of stuff.
What about the immediacy of the message now, TR? If you had gossip or something like that, it would take a while to go through school, and people had a little bit of a chance to adjust on the fly. But now information is so instantaneous that you can either be a hero or be slammed in a heartbeat on things, whether it's true or not. And we never had that speed of communications. Most things were like a little handwritten note passed around or something like that. And maybe by the end of the day, people would know. But now, you slam out a tweet or you put out a Snapchat thing, and it's done, man. It is out there. And it's fast and immediate, so you're just processing this stuff all day long, and not only is it likely to be distracting, and I think you have to grant me that on that, we all know kids checking their phones all the time and sneaking phones in class and all that, but it can also have immediate impacts on people's lives too that heretofore in the past we never had before.
I can tell you those notes you're talking about in class, Rosie, got me in a lot of trouble.
Yep, me too. What are you passing there? Let me see it. Hand it up. No, we're going to all read it now. You better not.
Make sure write it on. The teacher wouldn't dare read in front of everybody.
Yeah, there's some artwork on it too. You may not like it. Shit.
Yeah, I see what you say. Information overload. There could be some information overload, but I think it still gets kind of back basics where we're talking about where they're just hitting highlights, and it's not really education. Not that we're really still talking about that. Just having a lot of information is not necessarily education. That's just knowing a fact here and there, and it's so easy to get and all. They take it for granted. They're not trying to memorize it. They just need to know the answer right now and forget about it. A little different than a true education. I don't know.
So what does that do? What does that do for developing patience then? TR. You know, with the immediacy of gratification, what does that do for, you know, slack back, do the research, figure it out, think about it a while, and the answer will come to you. Can you imagine that these days?
Yeah, I know when you. I don't want to get off subject. Well, it's not really off subject, but I don't know how they do college now. I mean, I didn't go to a full-blown college. I went to a technical college. But when I first started, I was taking liberal arts classes. I was planning on transferring to Clemson or something like that. Didn't work out, but anyway, when I was just taking your basic liberal arts stuff, you know, your Englishes and history and all that, I had this one professor. I really liked him. I took a lot of his classes. I didn't have to. I just took them for credits. I just really liked him. He taught some hard classes. It was Western civilization and world history and some stuff I didn't really need, but he was just a really cool guy. And I know when I took his exams, he'd give you like 5 subjects, 5 different things. And when you showed up for exam day, he'd pick 3 of them, but you didn't know what 3. So you had to do research and know every subject, you know, all 5 of them. You had to know a little bit about all of them. He'd let you bring index cards in for like the outline. So you'd have the outline for all of them. And then when you went in there, it was like a 2-hour test, and you had to write a paper just off memory on the 3 subjects that he's picked. You know, so getting back to kind of we was talking about that, how there's less and less paperwork and less writings and stuff like that. And so you had to really study, and you had to be able to write an essay, 3 essays, you know, at one sitting.
Mm-hmm. I just think I'm going to be interested going forward to see if kids have any interest in things like gardening or things that take time to do, is hobbies and things like that, or if it's just going to be everybody's such a do it now, get it done, and slap it out. Whether that'll fall by the wayside is just not something that's it's not relevant in society anymore. Or you know, let somebody else take care of that, or you know, you could spin off a million implications of what we're talking about. And I observe, I connect the dots, I look at these kind of things in the world, and I think, like Fuzz says, yeah, there is some kind of new world order developing out there. You know, and I can kind of see it.
The new world order's rising.
I don't know. I don't, like I said, I think it's a combination of things. I think it's parents raising. I think it's society wussifying everybody. You know.
Well, here's another thing, and I don't mean to steal your thing because I got a big mouth. You guys know that, but when we're talking about careers and things, I mean, when I was in high school, there was it just seems there were many more things to discuss in terms of things that you could be back then. And then I wonder about kids today, if they still have the same thoughts of what they'd like their career to be, or they just float in to the job market and fly by the seat of the pants and do things that way. I just don't know. I don't sense that same thought about reading about something when you're young. Like in my year, it was the space program, and kids got turned on with that, with electrical engineering and aerospace studies, and you know, it was the big thing. I mean, model rockets, and there was a passion that developed for that type of thing. And I know we have computerization and those type of things, but you know, you just don't things. You see games. I mean, I'm not discounting video games and things like that, but you know, it's just, I just sense that kids don't have that same sense of what's out there to be done, and what can be done, and what's available, and what to develop those passions for those And I think you get that through reading, not through just being on the internet and exchanging very, measured in minute bits of precise information to people. I guess I'm saying, although we educate our kids, are they really smart in the context of?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to say. Is just information, period, doesn't necessarily mean you're educated or you're educating.
Bingo.
Just highlights and rough, just a little bit of information about a whole subject doesn't mean you're educated. You might know some facts and figures, even if you do memorize those facts and figures. You have no idea about the subject. You just know that one thing. It'd be like saying you know the theory of relativity, but all you know is E equals mc squared. But you don't know what relativity is, how the process got there. I mean, not that I do. I never said I do.
It certainly makes it more satisfying to know what something is grounded in, as opposed to just the voltage equals amperage times resistance. I mean, it's nice to know where things come out of and get some sense about things. It's very hard, as Matt was saying in the beginning. It's very hard. It's not hard, but it's harder to get that contextual sense of learning that's so critical to doing those connections and making those connections to advance society, I believe.
I got a prime example. I won't say prime example. I got an example. Here a while back, it's been months ago, we hired a new guy in maintenance. And like I said, injection molding, what I do. This guy had been in the Army, too. He was like Army Reserve, but he went through boot camp and all that stuff. And radios, which I'm pretty sure he just carried the freaking radio. There's no way in hell he was a radio operator. He was dumb as a box of rocks. But I don't know how he even got the job. I don't know who interviewed him, how they interviewed him, what. He's in his 20s, literally did not know how to put a drill bit in a drill. And I'm talking a keyless chuck. He could not do it. He tried like 4 times in a row. Somebody had to take it away from him and put the damn drill bit in it for him.
How did he get hired?
I don't know. I don't know how he made it to 20-something myself, but that's beside the point. I was like, how can you? I know maybe this ain't a good example, but in some ways, I'm wondering everything we're talking about. These kids don't do anything. They're not educated whatsoever. They're not taught shop, in high school. I mean, I'm not saying that every kid, when I grew up, knew how to use a drill when they was 22. But, I mean, it's like the lack, I don't know. It just blew my mind.
Yeah.
Have you ever talked to somebody so stupid they just make you squint? It's just kind of like, what?
Say what? What? Called your say what moment.
No, but what you're saying about TR, what you're saying about like people get like one piece of information and they think they're educated on it. Unfortunately, we are surrounded by those people every day on G+ and Facebook. I mean, how many like memes and internet pictures do you see that you look at and go, yeah, that's not right. That's not true at all. But you'd spend all day commenting on those pictures if you actually took the time to do so.
Yeah, maybe that wasn't the perfect example, but at the same time, I mean, I think a lot of the things we've talked about led up to where that boy was,
And there's no way that somebody came through like I went to public high school and could come through all the shop, metal shop, engine shop, machine shop, and hot metal and sheet metal and wood shop without knowing how to put a goddamn drill bit into a chuck, much less chalk up something on a lathe and make a damn screw and turn down a metal knurling it and things. It just amazes me. I mean, I studied electronics by just buying used textbooks on eBay from the 1950s from high school, and it's like, whoa! You look at this stuff that these kids studied in the radio and TV repair class, and it's like, oh my God, this is incredible. You know, tube theory and electronics, and I just don't know what the hell is being studied anymore.
Well, I think even years ago, which I know generations change, they always have. I mean, even when I grew up, the generation before me probably did different stuff and more stuff, whatever. But yeah, I don't think it was that uncommon, which you can't do it now, don't get me wrong. It wasn't that uncommon that the dad was out there changing oil in his car, tuning it up, even if he was upper middle class or something, you know what I mean? I mean, it wasn't that uncommon for people to be more hands-on.
That's how I learned my stuff, watching and working with the old man. Yeah.
Yeah, I started wrenching on things when I was real young. Real young. Helping my dad fix his. Here's a one you people don't hear very often. Helping my dad fix his Jawa motorcycle. Look that shit up.
That's a new one on me. Never heard of that.
I think Jawa is Czechoslovakian.
I think I was helping change oil under a 63 Chevrolet, so look that up. Oh, boy.
Now, don't get me wrong, I was a redneck, but I actually, and not down to my dad or trying to brag or anything, but I actually surpassed my dad's mechanical ability or knowledge as a teenager just because me and my buddies were into old hot rods and muscle cars. I mean, I was ripping rear ends out of cars and stuff, shit I ain't never seen, know how to do. Just keep taking bolts loose. It's got to fall out eventually, you know, and just figuring stuff out.
Yep.
Because I couldn't afford, I was a, bag boy at a grocery store back when you still took groceries out for people. And the only way you could get anything done or make improvements was to do it yourself. We'd go to junkyard, get parts that were better than what was on your car, and just
upgrading, constantly upgrading. Yeah, and messing around with carburetors and air inductors.
But that I'm not saying every kid should be doing that. I'm just saying that's just the way I grew up in the community. I grew up. Me and my buddies, we were gearheads, and.
Yep, same.
But me, of course, I've always worked on stuff. But I'm talking about taking. Hell, I was taking bicycles apart when I was like really young. How does this brake work? When you had the brake that you kicked it backwards, you do the pedal backwards. And
Yep.
I had to take it apart to figure out how it worked. My curiosity was killing me. I just don't see kids doing that now.
Where'd it go? This is one that's always agitated the hell out of me. Oh, crap. Mutt just said it. Where'd it go? Maybe it wasn't Mutt. Oh, no, Southern Style 357. Sorry. Said, I don't think many kids today know about beating a starter with a hammer to get your car to crank. It's never worked for me. I have beaten generators, like Harley generators, and got them to start turning, but I've never, ever, solenoids to get solenoids to stop sticking, but I've never, ever been able to get a starter to start working again by hitting it with a hammer. Ever. It's never worked for me.
Yeah. Now,
all the time.
Now, that being said, just go ahead and tell the audience out there, do not do that nowadays. Because the starters have permanent magnets in it, and you'll break the magnet and ruin the starter. But if the brushes are wore out in a starter, if it's like a generator or electric motor, if the brushes are wore out, sometimes you can tap on them and it kind of just vibrates the brushes, and it may start working again. It still needs to be fixed, but it may get you home or whatever.
Yeah, it's like Harley generators. Harley generators, you know, they got brushes. It's essentially a starter without the solenoid, really. But yeah, Harley generator. Yeah, I've smacked many of them and got them to start spinning again. But I've never had any luck with a starter. Never have, and it's always pissed me off because everybody I know has. And it's like I'm a fucking wrench. It's like it's not like I don't do this shit, you know.
Yeah, I can't say it's going to work every time, but I have done it myself. I remember my dad had a car or truck or something, and I think he drove it another week like it. It would start most of the time, and then every once in a while, and he'd reach up under there, beat on the starter, and it'd crank up and get us home.
My biggest problem with wrenching, and I'm gonna go back to Harleys, is that whenever I'd rebuild a Sportster motor, like an old Ironhead Sportster 900 or 1000 Ironhead, there's torque specs on it, you know, but you know, as always, when it came to Sportster heads, only the heads. When it came to Sportster heads, I threw away the torque specs, went balls deep plus a quarter turn. That was my torque spec, balls deep plus a quarter turn, and basically you can buy a head wrench for a Sportster because there's two bolts that are really hard to get, and they're 12-point heads. So I made one myself instead of spending like $30 or $40 to buy one. And this was my torque spec. I put the wrench on the head bolt. I put my foot on the rider's peg, not the passenger's peg, but the rider's peg. Hold on to the handlebar, and once the rear wheel left the ground, and it was just on the front wheel and kickstand at that point, that was tight enough.
I feel it's about 70 foot-pounds on that thing. You never cracked the head, huh?
I never cracked the head, but then my dumb ass would have to, like, a year later, 2 years later, change a head gaskets or do something. You'll pull that head off, and I'm sitting there trying to take that off. Like, what asshole put these on so fucking tight?
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, there's a lot of. I won't say I've built motors like that. I mean, probably some parts of it, no doubt. But of course, there's a torque spec on everything. But especially what I do now in injection and just manufacturing. Put a freaking cheater bar on something. It's like, yeah, about that tight.
That's about it. Yeah, that should hold. Famous last words.
Yep, balls deep plus a quarter turn. There's a reason they call me Silverback. I mean, because everything was, gorilla'd on.
Yeah, I ripped some tendons or ligaments in this elbow right here, trying to take something apart in a plant that somebody put together too tight.
Oh, well.
I knew he'd done it too. He was bad. Had like 2 cheater bars. I was 10 foot away from the damn Allen bolt I was trying to take out, and I heard it pop.
Yeah, I got a 3/4 inch drive breaker bar that's like 3 foot long. That's shaped, almost like a rainbow, you know. Schedule 80 pipe, 8 foot long, 2 guys, 1 foot on the machine.
I took stuff up. I don't know how we got on this. It don't matter. I took stuff apart in plants where we've had to use cranes and forklifts. I even welded an eyelet to a 3/4 inch breaker bar one time and was using a forklift to lift up on it, because it was like there wasn't enough cheater pipes. None of us couldn't do it. Okay, it's time to get to some heavier machinery. That fucking thing's coming off.
I have done that, and it's amazing every time. Like every time you do it, and it actually starts moving, you're holding on to that crane button, just chuckling, just freaking. It's like that's awesome.
It's funny.
All right, we'll do a change the subject right quick. Let's talk about guns, specifically Derringers.
Matt.
Yeah, this is the subject I wanted to talk about tonight. This is
Talk about Derringers first. Give us a little more knowledge. I know what a Derringer is, but why they came about, what's so great about this latest and greatest.
Well, and for anybody out there that doesn't know, I usually don't come on like the off air before we start the show and be like, TR, this is what I want to talk about tonight. But this was one of those nights that I actually did that. And for anybody out there that doesn't know, there's a new Derringer pistol coming out, and it folds up into the shape and general size of an iPhone. I think an iPhone, but a smartphone. It comes in 380, two-shot Derringer, and it folds up for pocket carry like an iPhone. And people are freaking out over this. I mean, they are just freaking out over this. Pop said high capacity. But what's pissing me off the most about everybody's freaking out about this, you got conservatives on one side saying, even pro Second Amendment guys are saying, well, cops aren't going to know who has a gun, so it puts their life in danger. And of course, liberals are saying, oh my God, a gun that looks like a cell phone, we're all going to die. My problem is not either one of those. It is these cops who have shot people because they have cell phones, because they have game controllers in their hands. I think this gun is a fantastic idea, and if it's reliable, I'll buy one. But there has been an amount of cops who have shot people that have cell phones in their hands because they couldn't identify what was in their hand. And coming out with a gun that looks like a cell phone is going to just make that problem worse. That's my only problem with it. And it's pissing me off that nobody is mentioning that. Everything I read, every article I read about it, it's one of the other two things. Liberals are pissed about it because it's a gun. I mean, let's be real. It doesn't really matter what it is because it's a gun. And conservatives are having a problem because it put cops' lives in danger. I don't care about either one of those. I'm worried about the people who own them getting shot because now they're suspect because now there's guns that look like cell phones.
That's a good point.
Pretty wild.
Instead of, yeah, good point. Put the phone down. Put the phone down. Boom. People are like, what? I don't know. I didn't think about that aspect, but you're right. It does add another twist to how law enforcement may react to, like you said, they've already shot people with a cell phone in their hand. And there's been so many bad shootings, I guess you'd say. I don't know what the right term is. I know a lot of police departments are backing off on, or at least paying attention to how things are handled. So maybe it won't be an issue. I don't know.
And I agree with Tyler. And Tyler, that should be a point that shouldn't even have to be verbalized. You know, Tyler says, "How about cops stop being trigger happy?" I don't disagree. I mean, there's a lot of trigger happy cops out there. There's a lot that aren't. There's several times out there that we've seen times where I would have shot somebody, and the cop didn't. But no, I mean, Tyler's completely correct.
There was a big issue on that here a few weeks ago. A police officer got shot. He was chasing a young guy on foot, and he rounded a corner of a house. He was, I guess, going through a neighborhood or whatever. And the young guy, I don't know how old the guy was. He might have been like early 20s or something. Maybe he was a teenager. I'm not sure. Anyhow, shot the cop, killed him. Then he turned the gun on himself and shot himself. But there was a big point made about the cop that got shot didn't have his gun out. His gun was still in his holster when they showed up. EMS, whatever, or the other police officers. And there was a big debate, not a big debate, but there was like the police chief and all that explained that his point was they didn't change policy because of all the police shootings that's happened here lately, unjustified shootings or whatever, that it was just more of a safety thing because he was running. They kind of been taught not to run with a gun in their hand in case they fall and trip and all that, But there was talk of it, just because it has been such a national headline going on about police shooting people that they probably shouldn't have,
Yeah, and it does happen. It does happen where cops haven't shot when they should have. And there's been plenty of times where cops have shot when they shouldn't have. And Galen said out there, I want a gun that looks like a gun, not a cell phone. Totally true. I mean, I don't disagree with that mindset. However, if you're concealing it like you're supposed to, whether it looks like a cell phone or whether it looks like a gun, if you're concealing it if you're concealed carrying, I don't want people to think that when I say concealing it like you're supposed to, that I have something against open carry. But if you're concealing, which the cell phone gun is supposed to be concealed, that's what it's made for. So if you're concealed carrying, it doesn't matter what the gun looks like at that point, because it's hidden. And I'll buy one if it's functionally sound and well built. They're going to retail for just under $300, I think. I'll buy one. I think it's awesome. But my concern is not the concern that everybody else I've seen talk about it is. And the fact that nobody else has even explored that option is just irritating the shit out of me.
Well, that's a very good point. Very good point.
And somebody said something about it. I think it was Mutt. Again, it might not have been Mutt. I blamed him earlier. Not blamed, but said him earlier with Southern style. Oh yeah, Mutt said, in this day and age, or in this day and time, your hands had better be empty. And then somebody said right after him, and up, or and over your head, or something like that. I don't disagree. I mean, I'm sorry, but if a cop or a citizen that you're breaking into their home has a gun pointed at you and you do anything other than this, you're a fool. You do anything other than this, you're asking to get shot.
Yeah, especially if they already got it drawn on you.
Yeah.
Is there another? I didn't know there was any other move you were supposed to do. I don't. it's my constitutional right, blah, blah. No, that's going to get your ass shot. You're a fool.
That'll do it.
I remember a long time ago, I probably shouldn't get into story time, but anyway, a long time ago, I was probably a teenager, older teenager, 18, something like that. And I don't know what happened. I can't remember. My dad got in an argument with a neighbor or some shit like that. I don't know what it was. But anyway, the cops got called out. This is in the 80s. And my dad had his hands in his jacket. And the police officer kept asking him to take his hands out of his jacket. My dad was arguing with him. Anyway, I just remember getting in between my dad and the police officer. I mean, there wasn't a scuffle or anything between them, and was begging my dad to, like go in the house or take your hands out of your pocket. And he's like, I don't have to do any fucking thing he says. This is my yard, and I knew he had a gun in his pocket. That's what really freaked me out. And but I mean, nothing happened. He didn't get arrested or whatever. The cop tried to I don't know what remember, but I just that is a very strong memory in my head.
Yeah,
he was now, if he'd done that today, he'd have got shot.
Somebody's got a gun pointed at you and they tell you to do anything.
Do it.
Do it. Yeah. I mean, unless you're some fucking. I mean, I got a video.
Unless you're a fucking thug, and you got a death wish, sure. Okay, go fuck around with the cop.
I got a video about disarming people with pistols, but I specifically said in that video, before it even started, if somebody's got a gun pointed at you and they're asking for your wallet, give them your damn wallet. If somebody's got a gun pointed at you, you do what they tell you. Because your constitutional rights don't mean a damn thing if you're in a coffin.
Yep, exactly. Now, don't get me wrong, when that little story I was telling, the cop didn't have a gun drawn on my dad. He was just talking to him. And there again, it was in the 80s. So, I remember what you said, Matt, about I don't care if it's your constitutional rights, you'll be pushing up roses. I remember I was riding a Harley one time that my brother had years ago. It didn't have turn signals on it, and it was just bare bike or whatever. And I took it around the block and was coming back to my parents where he lived. And there was a car coming up behind me, and I was about to turn, and I was like, oh, screw it, let me go on up and turn somewhere else. And when I came back, I said something to my brother. I was like, well, that car was coming up behind me and blah, blah, blah. He was like, well, whatever. You had your hand signal out. If they'd have hit you, it'd been their fault. And I was like, well, make sure and put that on my fucking tombstone, okay?
Right. Buzz T. Fork says, not reach for your pocket constitution. Yeah. Dude, everybody. I'm all about the rights. Your rights, my rights, everybody's rights. But when a gun is pointed at you, you don't reach for your pocket constitution to prove how right you are. You prove how right you are in the courtroom. You prove how right you are once they've said, okay, you're not armed, or whatever, But while he's like this, with his finger on the trigger, this is not the move to make. And I agree. AZ Patriot said you got to stand for something. I agree. You got to stand for something. But
yeah, don't go down with the ship.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty simple. It really is.
Yeah, there's a line in the sand that you just right or wrong, you kind of like, hey, whatever. If cops pointing the gun at me, I'm doing whatever the fuck he says. Period.
Me too.
Oh,
And that's
AZ
not
Patriot.
disrespect. That's not disrespect for the law. That's just respect for that fucking gun barrel pointed at my fucking ass.
That's for human life, pure life.
Yeah, that's respect for 1,150 feet per second. That's what that is. That thing travels a lot faster than your mouth does.
Yeah, leave it in mind.
And AZ Patriot, I wasn't picking on you. I was just using what you said as an example. Yes, and he said that's why I added the caveat of depending on the situation, of course. Yeah, of course. I mean, if you're standing there with the, you know, if you're at an open carry rally and the cops come up and say, "Why do you have your rifle?" He doesn't have his gun pointed at you. Yeah, you sit there, you get mouthy, not mouthy, but you know, tell them all about your fucking rights. But if he's got a gun pointed at your head, talking about your rights while racking your AR-15 while chambering around, probably not the smartest move. Because now they have an AR-15 in the police lockup with nobody to give it to.
Yeah, we had a shooting in South Carolina. The guy didn't die. I want to say it was around Columbia or something like that. I could be wrong. The cop was wrong, but at the same time, you know, it was a messed up situation. Like a cop whipped into a parking lot, or the guy might have pulled him over, or he might have pulled him over or whatever. The guy got out of his vehicle, hands up and all that stuff. Cop had the gun drawn on him. And the cop says, "Give me your license and registration." And the guy leaned over to his truck to get his license and registration out of the truck, but the cop shot his ass. It's like, well, you told him to get it, you know. And yeah, that made a big fuss. I think that cop got fired actually, because there was film on it and everything.
Now, Mindy said we are no longer living in a time where we have rights in the cop's eyes. I totally see where that statement comes from, but Mindy doesn't live here. Because I have a different opinion of that based on experience. I see cops, sheriffs, Border Patrol all the time. When I have guns, when I'm out shooting, when I'm all that stuff. And they absolutely think it's awesome. You know, like the rallies at the mosques. You know, the guys like that John Ritzheimer guy, when he was doing the rallies at the mosques here, the anti-Islam rallies, you know, the cops are super friendly. You know, let shit go unless it turns violent. You know, unless the people turn it violent. Other than that, I mean, it just, for the most part, the cops here are pretty laid back. And you hear quite often from a cop about enjoying your rights, or, you know, have fun enjoying your rights and all that, or whatever.
It definitely depends on where you live. And I think the crime rate in the bigger cities, and especially in the bad parts of the cities, skew the numbers and the stats big time. Not that there ain't asshole cops everywhere. There's, believe it or not, there's assholes everywhere. And some of them happen to have a badge on. But that don't mean all of them are assholes, in my opinion. Around here, I hadn't had a problem with, except city police. In the city of Greenville, those have been assholes to me. Other than that, anywhere else I've just talked to, come across, whatever, police officers, no problems.
Mutt asked about Ohio, and somebody else said something else that I wanted to answer. I can't remember. But the sheriffs back home, and if you go back to even when I lived in Ohio and we were on live chats and stuff like that, I always gave sheriffs their props. You know, the sheriffs were always cool. City cops, state patrol, dickheads. But the sheriffs were always really cool. And some of the city cops are okay, but, I mean, on average, they were kind of dicks. Although, story time, I was somewhere, legally, somewhere, shooting my AMD 65, my black AK that people have seen. And it was not long after I got it. Sheriff showed up, said, and I was already done shooting. Said, you know, we got a call that you were shooting a shotgun out here with kids. And I was like, well, you know that that's not illegal. I'm out in the county on private property, and shooting a shotgun, no matter who's around, is perfectly legal. And I said, and to that point, do you see any shotgun shells around? You know, laying on the ground. They were like, no. And they said, we see a bunch of rifle cases. And I said, yeah. I was shooting my new AK, trying it out. Can we see it? I said, no, you don't have a right to see it. And they were like, come on, man, you know, we need to go back with something that we did something. I was like, you did something. You came out, you checked it. You checked something out, you realized it's perfectly legal, and you left. You know? And they kept talking to me, and I realized at this point, it was like, okay, they're not going away. And the more I stall them and waste their time, the more pissed they're going to get at the group of people that I was with. And the harder time they're going to run us later on. And so I was like, fuck it. I went in, got the rifle, brought it out, showed him it was empty, handed it to him. I come out to see one of the cops, like, you know, has a bunch of empty shell cases in his hand, looking at him and shit. Hand my rifle to the other. He's looking at it. He's like, oh, that's cool. You know, that's not, you know, that's a nice rifle. He's like, all right, man. You know, hands it back to me. I grab it by like the muzzle, just by the muzzle, and hold it there. The other cop tosses the shell cases on the ground. All right, later. They turned the corner. I picked up those shell casings, and I walked back in the house like this, and I was like, hey, guys, I got a bunch of cops' fingerprints on an AK-47 and empty shell casings.
Let's put this one away just in case. Yeah, I know I've told this story. I don't know if it was this chat or Sunday night chat where me and a buddy of mine was shooting, had guns laid all out in the bed of a truck, and we was out on this dirt road. Cop come up and stopped and talked to us a while. There was actually some guys riding some motorcycles down the road a little bit at the end of the little dirt road we was on, and they got complaints they was going too far, getting on people's private property and shit. And that's what he was there for. And meantime, I mean, when he drove up, I had at least 2 guns, 2 pistols on me, if not 3, but I know I had at least 2. My buddy had 2 guns on him. And then, like I said, the tailgate, the truck was just rifles. We have SKSs and all kind of shit laying there. And he sat there and talked to us about 15, 20 minutes. Then he said, well, okay, I see, you know, you're not what I was called out for, and left or whatever. He even said, I'm not going to write you a ticket today, but you might not want to come back out here and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, he was really cool about it, but I remember calling my buddy after that, and I was like, I know he seemed like he was really nice and all that, and he probably was. I said, but I know good and well he wasn't about to dare write us a ticket because we was out in the middle of fucking nowhere. He was by himself, and we were way overarmed, way more armed than he was. I said he might have just said that because he was scared to write us a ticket.
Oh.
It makes you be a nice guy. When you think about writing that ticket, it's a good story.
You want to talk about a scared cop, man. This guy had to have been like all of 5'4", you know, maybe 5'5", little teeny guy. And you could tell he was a greenhorn too, you know. He pulled 4 of us over on our bikes. And we were doing like 70 and 35 or some shit like that. I mean, probably very unsafe and justifiably pulling us over. No matter what I think of speed limits, it was a little ridiculous. So he pulls us over. He asks, do any of you have any weapons on you? Now in Ohio, you have an obligation to inform. You know, if you got a concealed weapons permit, if you're concealing without a concealed weapons permit, then you're committing a felony anyway. But he says, do you guys have any weapons on you? We're like, yes. Would you mind setting them on the hood of the car? And one of the guys goes, all of them? And he's like, how many do you have? We each had two, and two spare mags plus the ones that were in the pistols. So it was like almost like the movies, man. Clunk, 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 all on the hood of the car, and he's just sitting there like. And mind you, one of the guys with us is like 6'6", so he's like, you know, it's like this, like David and Goliath. He doesn't write us a ticket. Nothing. He does this number. He says, "Okay, guys, have a nice day. You can collect your guns once I get in the car." And he backs away from us. He walks backwards around this car and gets in.
I bet you felt badass.
It's like, man, one more gun pops out, this guy's gonna piss himself.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one there. There again gets into that, okay, yeah, I'm just going to let these guys go because I don't want a confrontation just in case.
Yeah, you should have seen the look when my buddy goes, all of them? He got really confused, like, how many do you have?
In round numbers. Oh, shit.
Well, Greg, that could be some of the lifestyle I lived. Greg says, you're younger than me, still have more stories about run-ins with cops than I do. Oh, that's only a start. I should do a chat where that's all I tell is cop stories.
I can't say I've had a lot of run-ins with cops, but most of them have been positive. I've only had a couple that were like, still didn't get took to jail or arrested or anything, but like I said, the worst one was probably with the Greenville, South Carolina, Greenville City Police in South Carolina. They were assholes, but.
Oh, and it was funny. That group of people, we owned a van. Collectively, we owned a van, and in the wintertime it was really bad, and we had parties to go to or events to go to. We'd all ride in the van. We'd pile up the whole chapter. But not everybody was legal to carry. We got pulled over. Those of us with concealed weapons permits were strategically placed in the van. That way everybody could toss their guns in our laps. That was funny. We'd get pulled over. Fucking cop would come to the window. I'd have literally a lap full of pistols. Just a lap full of them. Pistols, magazines, knives. But they can't do anything about it because they can't prove anybody else, had them. Yeah, that was always fun. Cop would come to the window, we're all cracking up laughing because it's funny every time it happens.
All right, Misfits here. I guess it's getting time to wind it down.
There we go. Well, just mention that Cruz won in Wisconsin and Bernie. One tonight, and remember, 95% of the delegates are pledged on the first ballot, and then 75% are free after that. So remember that.
Yeah, and they from what I've read, they're predicting Trump will get New York and California. So I think he's going to be hard to stop.
I don't think he's going to get California.
You don't think so?
I think the tide is subtly turning now. Isn't it interesting that in so many years gone by, what happened later in the primary season didn't even matter, and now we've got the exact flip side of that. What happened early on really is not. Now it's the stuff coming down the pike that's really going to be important. And let me tell you guys, when it comes to California, this is a really expensive state to wage a fight in. So stay tuned. It's going to be very interesting here. So that's all I can say. It's the first time that we'll have probably seen any ads in years. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a election. Actually, the primary more so than the election. That's going to be remembered for a while, for good or bad. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's been pissing me off about this election? And I said something on G Plus the other day, and I said something on Facebook the other day, is that, have you noticed, and I think we've even mentioned this before, but it's getting worse and worse. Have you noticed on Facebook and Google Plus the amount of conservatives attacking Cruz and the amount of conservatives attacking Trump? But you look through their profile, and they're not saying shit about Hillary or Bernie. And it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? I get it. You like Cruz or you like Trump. But let's not forget who the enemy really is.
Yeah.
You know?
You got all these broken bodies laying all over top of each other, and Hillary's got all these great sound bites.
Yeah, this is a screwed up primary, no doubt.
I think they'll have to change the way these are. Just have delegates go to a convention in the future.
Yeah, a lot of people are finding out how this process works, no doubt.
Yeah. And some aren't liking it.
Yeah.
Well,
I've even seen them on the news. I say news, but it was like 24-hour Fox news channel, whatever we play at work, and in the break room, and one of the little reporters, whatever, was like asking this judge. It was actually Judge Napolitano, which I really like. I really like him. But anyway, they're like, well, what about the constitutional, laws about this and da-da-da? And he had to correct him. Was like, this is the Republican Party. This is nothing to do with the Constitution. There's no constitutional right. They can do whatever they want, and a lot of people are not liking it. But, I mean, that's the way their party system is set up. It has nothing to do with the Constitution and voting for whoever. So this could very well split the Republican Party.
I mean,
I'm not sure that it don't need to be, but
I've posted pro-Trump things and I've posted pro-Cruz things, but not because of the people so much, but because of something they said or did. Right? So, like, I made a picture, a split picture, top and bottom. The top picture was the picture of Obama with the Marine holding the umbrella for him. And the bottom picture was a picture of, like, Trump and Chris Christie getting out of a private plane, and Trump was holding his own umbrella, and it said, there's something to be said for a man that can hold his own umbrella. It wasn't so much a pro-Trump, definitely not pro-Christie, but it wasn't so much a pro-Trump picture as it was, look at this fucking twat Obama, And I've posted things that, interviews or whatever Cruz has done where he has said something really good, But if you go through my Facebook, especially Facebook, I don't post it so much on G+, mainly because I'm tired of hearing opinions. But if you go through my Facebook, it's like politically, it's anti-Bernie, anti-Hillary, anti-Bernie, anti-Hillary, pro-Constitution. Anti-Bernie, anti-Hillary, pro-Constitution.
Yeah, I think that's the saddest thing about this whole, push against Trump by the establishment is they're not going after Hillary and Bernie. It's just like they want to make enemies of other people running in the Republican race more so than the Democratic side. The Hillary, Bernie. It's all about internal fighting, and I don't know, it's a mess. I can understand them wanting to kind of outdo each other to look like the better candidate, but they should be talking about, on all of them, should be talking about Hillary and Bernie, and how that they are better. Compare each other how you're going to be better than them, how bad it's going to be if they get in. You can, poke and jab a little bit at each other, but just if one of them says one thing, hell, up them on how they're going to do it even better. Not necessarily just flat out attack each other and forget about the whole other race,
And Saint usually says one good thing per chat. Sometimes not, but this time he did. Maybe they will focus after the conventions. It's true.
It's gonna be a fucking messy summer, guys.
Maybe they will. Maybe they'll focus after the conventions, whether it's a brokered convention or whatever. But yeah, maybe once it's game time, maybe it will be whoever the conservative or Republican candidate is, and the people supporting him. Let's not forget about those people attacking the Democrats instead of each other.
All right, if there's nothing else we want to bring up, we'll go ahead and wrap this up.
Good time tonight.
Good chat. I enjoyed it. Yeah, actually, we got off on some tangents that were good when we was talking about the younger generations and stuff like that. That was a good conversation. I know everybody in the external in the comments section was really chiming in a lot on that.
It was very interesting.
Good subject, man.
Yep.
I can't believe that weapons machinist left just because people disagreed with him about storing gas.
Really, I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
That he done that. Oh well. Wow. Anyway, you want to do a outro?
Sure.
All right. Go ahead, Rosie.
All right. Thanks for another great chat, Matt and TR. Good time. I like some of the subjects. We don't plan really coming in, and I really enjoy the way that things branch off and throw some fresh thought out there and some fresh ideas and get people thinking about the linkages and the way that things used to work together and how things work now as opposed to years ago, and whether things are better or worse for it. And maybe you can't even judge it on being better or worse, but it gives me a lot to think about, and I appreciate sharing ideas with Matt and TR. So thank you as usual. I have my Wednesday night chat, Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Anything goes. Your goal is to just stay in the ring and not get launched out. So it's always a good time on those chats, and always good content up. I pulled a well pump. I'm in the middle of repairing that for our irrigation pump, and always interesting things, I think, on the channel, enjoyable stuff. So I appreciate everybody being subbed, and don't forget the Rosie Murphy channel for the weekly eco investment update. Thank you, TR. Thank you, Matt.
Well, thank you, Rosie, for coming on. It's always a joy. Enjoy your opinions and your point of view on things, and your knowledge, of course. Matt, go right ahead, man.
Thanks for having me on TR. I didn't let it all out tonight like I really thought was going to happen. I figured we'd touch on something and I'd freak out because, like I said, I've been pissed off all day long. I've just been in a bad mood for 2 days. I can't tell you why. I just have been. Yeah, and so I was sitting in my row right before I took a shower. Before I got on here, I was like, "This is going to be a mess tonight. Somebody's going to say something, and I'm going to freak the fuck out." Because it has happened before. But thanks for having me on. Resist Tyranny, Guns, Gear, and Politics on YouTube. Got a couple more videos that are scheduled to come out over the next week, or the rest of the week into the weekend. And a couple training videos coming out soon. And other than that, yeah, that's about it. Thanks for having me on.
Cool. Thanks for being here, man. As far as my channel, I'm sure a lot of people out there have seen I've got into trying out powder coating lead bullets. Gotten a little bit of flack, most of it just all jokingly, about the Glock, because that is one of the reasons I went ahead and jumped the gun and done that. But I'll probably be doing some more videos on that if anybody's interested. And other than that, I don't really have anything planned. But thanks everybody for coming by. Thanks Rosie and Matt for stopping in and chatting with me. I appreciate it. We always have a good audience and a good chat, a good conversation, and I do appreciate it. And we'll see everybody later. See ya.
Thank you.